Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Glad you could join me here today for this special edition of the Cabral Concept, where we will be talking about genetically modified organisms. We'll be talking about genetically engineered foods and why they may have long-lasting repercussions for you, your family's health, as well as the environment and what you can do about it. I will also share with you a very simple way that you'll be able to look at any food in any grocery food store, check out the label, and simply know if it has been radiated, if it's been pesticide sprayed, if it's organic, or if it's genetically modified. So I'll share all of that with you today. You'll also be able to find all the information over at stephencabral.com/1643. I'll try to give you some research that you can also use as well in your studies. So the big thing is this. We have to understand first, why are genetically engineered and genetically modified organisms being created? Well, essentially, what they are, and this is very important to even know what they are. Take a food such as, let's say, cotton, or take a food such as corn, right? That's a very popular genetically modified one, corn or soy. And what you're doing is you're taking the food itself, but inside of the cell, inside of the DNA, you're actually restructuring the DNA. And you're taking a virus or a bacteria or a piece of human or animal-based DNA, and you're actually putting that into that plant or potentially animal. Right now with pigs, they're calling them the enviropigs, which, again, they give them these nice-sounding terms, but a pig that's been genetically modified is anything but good for the environment. They're actually taking E. coli and other types of bacteria from mice, etc., and trying to inject it into the pig to make it essentially yield and be healthier for them to produce more of it. So who are them? Well, them are big pharma and big pharma and big farm put together. So big pharma are the pharmaceuticals, and big pharma are essentially the main and the largest farms out there that are really eating up and destroying a lot of the small farmers. So they try to convince us, and I'll give you all the research, but they try to convince us that this is going to increase crop yield. And they try to convince us that we'll actually need less pesticides if we genetically modify these foods because, well, they're supposed to be then insect-based resistant. But the problem is, well, let me just give you a couple more. They also tell us that it's going to cost us, the consumer, less money if we genetically modify these. They say, well, it's supposed to be better for the environment as well, and there's supposed to be more nutrition in these crops. Now, I'll tell you this. Every single one of those can be refuted. Every single one of those can be refuted, and they have been refuted, and I'm going to go through many of those arguments today just within a couple of minutes because I know a lot of people listen to this show, and I hope that they understand that genetically modified organisms and genetically engineered foods is not about helping us create more food for the world. It's not about that at all. It's actually about creating terminator seeds and certain seeds that you have to go to one specific company for, such as a Monsanto, and they own the food. So their goal is to actually make every food genetically modified. But here's the thing. You have to use their seeds. It's not like these are open source seeds. And they've even gone so far as to have their seeds end up in another small farm beside them, and they sue that farm for using their seeds illegally. I know that sounds insane, and it is, but that is what does happen sometimes. So what I want to share with you is this. It's not about that. It's about owning all of your food. It is about owning the food that we need to nourish our body. And can you imagine if one or two or even three companies were allowed to own the food? Think about then what would happen to the prices. Think about then what could happen to shortages. You don't own your own food. You can't grow your own food in your own backyard because they own all the seeds. So believe me when I tell you, this is not about philanthropy. This is not about being a benefactor to the global-based world. This is about controlling and increasing profits. And at the same time, do remember that although this is supposed to be naturally then a lot of these plants insect resistant, more spray, something around 7% is more sprays even used on these genetically modified plants and foods. And the reason is that they are actually then they've been genetically modified to be able to withstand all of this herbicide and weed killer. Please go back, if you have not already listened, to episode 629. I'm not going to go into the dangers of pesticide spray today. That was at stephencabral.com/1629. My team will try to embed it today at stephencabral.com/1643. So I just want to give you, again, a little bit about how this is so off base. Keep in mind that the environment is being destroyed by all of this insecticide and these pesticides being sprayed on crops. It's destroying the soil. Keep in mind, these things kill a lot of the good natural bacteria in the soil, which does not allow then for the uptake of as many nutrients in genetically modified foods. Yes, the carbohydrates, the fats, and the protein are likely to be the same, but what about all the different vitamins? What about all the different minerals? Those are oftentimes less. So you're looking at the food might even look prettier than organic. That doesn't mean that it's better, and the nutritional value is actually less. But not only that, when we look at the true statistics, we can begin to see how detrimental it really could be for our health. So I'm going to go through the food list with you today of the most common genetically modified foods. And then what I want you to do is also be able to choose the right foods for your body, your family as well. Okay, so I'm going to get into those stats right now. Here's a couple things that you should know, and I'm going to link this up. It's responsibletechnology.org. I always give credit where credit's due, and I want to share this with you right now. Here's the stats. Soy allergies, so genetically modified soy, and allergic reactions. This is what it's called. Soy allergies skyrocketed by 50% in the UK soon after GMO soy was introduced. A skin prick allergy test shows that some people react to GM soy, genetically modified soy, but not to wild natural soy. Cooked genetically modified soy contains as much as 7 times the amount of soy allergen. Genetically modified soy also contains a new unexpected allergen, which is not found in natural soy. And this is because you have to understand, you are taking a snip of something else's DNA or a virus or a bacteria, and you're inserting it in nature. You don't know, and we don't know always how that's going to turn out, right? It's not as predictable, and that's why new allergies, we see infertility sometimes, we see digestive issues, we see increase in allergies and asthma as a result of these GM foods. Here's another one. This is corn and cotton. Let's see, damage to the immune system, damage to the intestines, and it looks like more toxic than the natural spray and is 1,000 times more concentrated. Farmers in India were also getting far more allergic reactions. GMO fails allergy tests. No test can guarantee that a GMO will not cause allergies, and that's by the World Health. GMO may make you allergic to non-GMO foods. So genetically modified soy drastically reduces digestive enzymes in mice. It can also impair your digestion, make you sensitive and allergic to a variety of foods. Super, super important that we look at that as well. Genetically modified peas. Again, if you're not using a good organic product, you want to make sure of that, of course. GMO and liver problems. Rats fed genetically modified potatoes had smaller, partially atrophied livers. That means there's a breakdown in the liver. The livers of rats fed genetically modified canola oil were 12 to 16% heavier. Genetically modified soy altered mouse liver cells in a way that suggests a toxic insult. The change is reversed after they switched to non-GMO soy. GMOs, reproductive problems, and infant mortality. More than half the babies of mother rats fed GMO soy died within 3 weeks. Male rats and mice fed GM soy had changed testicles, included altered young sperm cells in mice. The DNA of mouse embryos functioned differently when their parents ate GMO soy. The longer mice were fed GM corn, the less babies they had, the smaller the babies were. Babies of female rats fed GM soy were considered smaller, and more than half died within 3 weeks, compared to 10% of non-GMO soy controls. Female rats fed GM soy showed changes in their ovaries and uterus. By the third generation, most hamsters fed GM soy were unable to have babies. I mean, this is unbelievable. And I'm not even done yet. And the reason why I say this is that soy is put in so many different things, and same with corn, and they're genetically modified. And over 90% of corn, over 90% of soy is genetically modified. So unless there's a non-GMO label on it, you could be doing yourself a really great disservice. Let's go on. Crops linked to sterility, disease, and death. Thousands of sheep, buffalo, and goats in India died after grazing on Bt cotton plants after harvest. Others suffered poor health and reproductive problems. Farmers in Europe and Asia say their cows, buffaloes, chickens, and horses died from eating Bt corn. About 24 U.S. farmers report that Bt corn varieties cause widespread sterility in pigs and cows. Filipinos in at least 5 villages fell sick when a nearby Bt corn variety was pollinating. The stomach lining of rats fed GM potatoes showed excessive cell growth, a condition that may lead to cancer. Rats also had damaged organs and immune systems. All right, let's just go over a couple more. If the antibiotic gene inserted into most GM crops were to transfer, it could create super diseases resistant to antibiotics. If the gene that creates Bt toxin in GM corn were to transfer, it might turn our intestinal bacteria into living pesticide factories. Animal studies show that DNA in food can travel into organs throughout the body, even into the fetus. So that means that expecting mothers could have these GM-based foods affecting their unborn baby. I'm going to keep it at that, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to link up this website for you, and there are over 41 different citations. I won't even get into tryptophan, how they made L-tryptophan into a bad product because it was a genetically modified version of it. What I do want to share with you is this. I'm going to share with you now the foods of genetically modified organisms. And we are talking about common foods that you probably don't even know are genetically modified that are showing up every single day in your grocery food store. So let's go over those right now. The first one is going to be cotton, okay? Really, really important. Genetically modified cotton is heavily sprayed with pesticides, okay? This has led to soil. It has led to basically infertility in the soil, killing a lot of the good microorganisms and bacteria that we need to grow healthy, positive crops. And it has led to India farmers' suicides with all different health-based issues. And this has created severe inflammation and inflammation of the intestines. Palm oil, highly genetically modified and genetically engineered as well. Rice is another one. Golden rice and flood-resistant rice have been shown to contain higher levels of vitamin A. Now, we need good levels of vitamin A, but not genetically modified levels of vitamin A, as well as an increase in rice-based allergies. Soy. We just spoke a lot about soy, but keep in mind, it's in vegan-based foods as a processed food. It's in tofus, it's in soybeans, it's in soy milks, it's in soy flours, it's soy protein powder, soy lecithin. I mean, all sorts of different products that have been connected with higher rates of death and infertility, especially in rats. Okay, so really, really important we look at that. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, allergies, asthma, infertility linked potentially to genetically engineered, genetically modified soy. Sugar beets, we'll go over next. Sugar beets, another big one that can have a serious impact on the environment as well. Genetically modified yeast. Think about all the alcoholic beverages. Now, the wines are not supposed to contain genetically modified yeast, but that doesn't mean that they may not start being used. And that's because there is one called ML01 or ML01 that is a genetically modified wine yeast that's been released to the market that might start showing up in wines anytime now. Really, really dangerous stuff because the increase potentially in allergies and, again, allergic-based reactions, headaches, etc., could go way up. You know I'm an advocate for cassava, but cassava is also a genetically modified food, first genetically modified way back in 1955. And the problem is, though, these crops, when genetically modified, started to lose their antiviral-based capacity. Not a healthy thing at all. I'm someone that loves to promote a lot of the great foods in the West Coast and in Hawaii, etc. But a lot of the Hawaiian papayas are genetically modified. So you might be like, oh, I get this, papaya from Hawaii. The problem is half of them are genetically modified. And again, a lot of the bananas inside of the U.S. are genetically modified as well. A lot of people don't believe their sugar alternatives are genetically modified, but things like aspartame are. One of the reasons why it could be causing gut issues, neurological issues, etc. Potatoes we spoke about, really huge issue with blood toxicity. Corn, we talked about it being as highly genetically modified as soy, and corn is put in almost every single processed product imaginable. It's put in toothpaste, it's put in ice cream, it's in certain types of yogurt, it's in different types of like extracts, it's in salad dressings. Corn syrup is in so many different things, sometimes labeled as maltodextrin. They try to fake you out as to what it's in: cornmeal, citric acid, corn starches, and unless you get a product that says non-GMO. So for example, I'm not even going to name my company that I founded, that I formulate for, because I don't want this to be a promotion for it, but everything is non-GMO. It's a non-starter. Basically, let's say a company comes to us, they say, we have a great technology to be able to extract this from, let's say, turmeric, whatever it might be, and they show it has 3x the absorption rate, et cetera, et cetera. And if they say, well, it's genetically modified, it's a straight no. He's a scientist, but he's a nutritionist as well, and he specializes in food and food-based formulations. And he knows on my team it's a non-starter. If it's a genetically modified product, we just don't use it. So that's the nice thing, is that some companies just refuse to do genetically modified products. Tomatoes, another big genetically modified food. One of my favorite foods. Love butternut squashes. Well, a lot of squash is genetically modified. The problem is that when you go to eat these foods, you might increase your chances of getting different types of pathogens, bacterial-based diseases as well. We talked about corn, right? We talked about cotton, we talked about soy, but another oil that is genetically modified is called canola oil, often referred to as rapeseed oil, because a lot of people already know that canola oil is toxic for them as well. Let's see, a couple animals that you should know about. And one of those, that's the Enviro pig that I spoke about previous, really, really troublesome. But I would also just mention this. A lot of the cattle that you eat, a lot of the beef that you eat, a lot of the pork that you eat is fed these genetically modified foods. And what is that doing to the cattle? Well, again, long-term studies aren't there. Typically, GMOs are studied for 90 days in rats. That doesn't mean that it's safe, right? Because that would be the equivalent to about 7 to 8 years in human life. Well, what about 10x that? Where are the studies showing that GMO foods are okay to eat over 70 years? Those studies do not exist. This is not a well-studied science experiment going on right now. And again, that's why you have to be really careful about these animals being pumped full of hormones and antibiotics and recombinant bovine growth hormone, as well as being fed GMO soy, GMO corn. These are things that happen every single day, unless you know where your food's coming from. That's essentially it. That's what I'm trying to preach today. GMO salmon we have now, right? These salmon are being raised in plastic pools, being fed corn, being fed soy, being fed all sorts of things that I spoke about on a previous podcast that would make your stomach literally turn inside out. Peas is one that I spoke about, looking at the potential with causing lowered immunity with that. GMO alfalfa has been around a long time, right? I remember that many years ago watching out for GMO alfalfa because the amount of herbicide also that's sprayed with. The amount of Ready Roundup used to spray alfalfa and then you taking that in, really, really toxic. And it's a soft-based food and it can get absorbed right into the plant. The last one I'm going to give you is honey. Honey is being considered a genetically modified food now as well. And that's because you have to keep in mind that the bees are often feeding off GMO-based cotton or GMO-based canola. And then they're bringing that back and they're putting it inside of their hives where the honey is coming from. So this is why I feel that it's so important to know where our food comes. It's why I feel it's so important to be able to meet your local farmers, get to a local farmers market if you're able to. You can just simply type in local farmers market on Brave, which is a internet search browser that's not going to track your whereabouts like a lot of the other ones. And it's an easy way. Get out there, meet your local farmers. It's a great thing to do. But let's say that you are in your local grocery food store. I still go to Whole Foods. I still go to all these different places as well. But especially when I'm in Maine, we don't go to Whole Foods at all. We shop at our farmers markets. We shop at our neighbor's farm stand, which is about a half mile down the street. And we also support our local health food stores that then purchase from the local farms. We go to our local farms with our daughters, and it's a nice thing to do on the weekend. What does it take? Maybe an hour? I mean, that's about it. And then you teach your kids about eating healthy, where their food comes from. They get to see the animals right there. They get to see the plants growing. We don't have a massive garden by any means, but we're growing all sorts of different veggies in our backyard. We've got carrots, we've got cucumbers, we have celery, we have different types of lettuce, we've got peas, all sorts of different things growing back there. But the thing is, you can't always do that, right? Because, if you're not setting up your full garden, if you're not raising, any of your own, let's say, chickens or something like that, like whatever it might be, and again, whatever you're into, is not always possible. So here's what I want to share with you, though. It's not that bad to walk into a grocery food store and be able to truly know if the food has been irradiated or using what's called ionizing irradiation. And I want you to just look at the stickers on your produce, on your veggies, on your fruit. Here's what I want you to look for. If the number starts with a 3, then that means it's conventionally grown. It also means that it has been irradiated. So it's using electronic pasteurization. It's using irradiation. It's basically using radiation on your food. So just something to look at. That's with a 3 code. So if it starts with a 3, meaning like a number sign or a pound sign, and then a 3, they're typically 4 digits long, or a 4. And if it starts with a 4, it means it's been probably heavily sprayed with pesticide. At least it's been conventionally grown, right? If you're going to buy one of those, go for the Clean 15. Check out my previous podcast I did on the Clean 15. That was on episode 1629. We'll try to link that up today. All right. How do you know if it's a genetically modified food? Well, if it's a genetically modified food, really, I do want you to stay clear of those. I mean, you don't have to. I'm not telling you what to do with your life, but what I want to do is simply share with you my recommendation. And my recommendation is that there are no good long-term studies. And also, I want to share with you this. We don't know when we try to manipulate nature what's going to happen. All the different infertility, the digestive issues, the immune responses, the allergies, the asthma, really mental health-based disorders potentially based on what happens with the gut. Really scary stuff. So genetically modified food begins with an 8. Typically a 5-digit code, and it begins with an 8. I'm going to write all this down today. So you can head on over to StephenCabral.com/1643. Today is StephenCabral.com/1643. I'll put the labels up there. I'll put what they mean. And the last one is this. If you're looking for organic first, it's going to begin with a 9, and it's typically a 5-digit code. So you can look at the label. You can look at what's called, I believe, the PLU codes. If it begins with a 3 or a 4, that means it's conventionally grown. It's not organic. If it begins with an 8, it's genetically modified. In an ideal world, you're going to look at that little sticker on your fruit or your veggies, and it's going to begin with a 9. If you can't buy all organic, I understand. Look for the Clean 15, and those will begin with a 4, okay? Stay away from the 8s. Again, in my opinion, I'm sharing this with you, but I did back that up with all the science and all the facts as well in order for you to keep yourself safe and healthy, your family, your kids, your loved ones. Share this information. That's what it's all about. So, as I always say, if this podcast was helpful, please do feel free to share this information with anyone you believe it can serve. Take care. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or a lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests, or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equi.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.